reason when I had the deposition from the cardiologist, it was whether the sinus tachycardia was positive for the IME, if the insurance company said no. So it was interesting.
Wow, actually resetting the phone did help.
Okay. Sometimes it's really
All right, I will officially call the meeting to order. If you could stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have several announcements tonight. First is this week, I guess starting today, the 17th is officially School Board Recognition Week. Next Tuesday, when the school board has their regular meeting, I will go and present them with a proclamation on behalf of the village. A couple fun events coming up. Harvest Hayride on Saturday, the 22nd from 6 to 8:30 p.m. Family rides are from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then the haunted rides, which aren't that scary, but maybe for little ones, are from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. I believe there's also a band playing and hot chocolate and donuts. It's a fun day for sure. Window decorating is on Main Street is on Saturday, October 29th from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The Halloween parade is on Sunday, so it's the day before Thanksgiving, the day before Halloween, Sunday the 30th at 3:30 at the Immaculate Conception Church parking lot, and then it comes down to the Main Street School. Please no dogs. So that's, again, it's on 3:30 on October 30th. Trick-or-treating is, of course, on Halloween proper, which is a Monday this year. And the bands will be playing, I believe, from 5 p.m. to about 10 o'clock.
4:30.
4:30.
Because I know a certain band that's playing at 4:30.
Okay, so 4:30, the kickoff band, get there early. 4:30 until ... But usually around 10 o'clock or so. But if you haven't been down to the Main Street area during Halloween, it's actually a heck of a lot of fun. It's just completely organically happened over the years. I think we're up to about 10 bands, maybe 11 bands, something like that now.
It was a lot at the meeting. I don't know exactly, but it was a lot. Yeah, I think it's 8, it might only be like 8 or 9, but it's a lot.
But it's a lot. It's more than last year. They're spread out along the side streets of Main Street, which are flat, not like the like Main Street. They're not quite as hilly. So we get a great crowd, and it's a lot of fun. And then to work off all the Halloween candy, to look a little bit ahead, the Peter Oley Turkey Trot is on Sunday, November 20th. And as everyone knows, this year is our 150th anniversary. The Village of Elmsford gave us a very nice plaque congratulating their great friends in Irvington on our 150th anniversary. That was, Mayor Williams and all his trustees. So but that was a pretty cool plaque.
That's pretty.
Larry will find a nice place for it.
Yeah, we'll do.
Take down one of the other plaques.
Yeah, exactly. The 100th
anniversary.
Yeah. And then last, but of course not least, we have checks over $25,000. We had one for $220,679.49, which was for Montesano Brothers for paving and milling, and that came from the general funds, CHIP general fund, as well as CHIPS grants and recurring paving. Next one was for Pacific Transglobal Corporation for the clock tower repairs. That came out of the capital budget, and it was $149,503.30. I believe that's all I have for announcements. So I felt like I had something else. Maybe it was just the plaque from Elmsford. Anybody else have announcements?
No, thank you for doing most of my recommendations.
Oh, sure. And just quickly, last Friday, actually, I attended the Clock Tower Players, which are kind of the Irvington acting troupe that has lots of not just children's but also adult performances in the Town Hall Theater when it's open. They had their gala on last Friday, which was a great event. It was actually the Tarrytown Music Hall this year, which felt a little odd, but it was a great event. And then on Friday also, the theater actually had a showing of Coco outside, and I heard it was a great night. People had a lot of fun. It was good weather, well attended. They had over 300 people there.
I haven't, Greg emailed me the numbers. I was going to do it in my during report. Do you want to mention it now?
No, you can wait. I don't want to steal your thunder. This is my informal off the cuff.
Gotcha.
Okay, yeah. But I just want to thank them for doing that, and thank Greg in particular for continuing to push to have theater events while the theater is dark because of the HVAC. Anybody else have announcements?
I wanted to just mention that they had the fun run for more sustainable Irvington on
Yes.
Sunday, and they had about 60 participants. And it was a great time, and it was organized by a high school student, so that was fantastic.
Yeah, I heard from the rec, it was a great event. It went really well.
well attended, especially for, it was organized quickly, so I think 60 people is
That's great.
a really good number.
All right. Correspondence, I believe we have none, Larry.
Nope.
Any public comments? Anyone at home as well, Larry?
Yep.
I figure,
We do
There
have
is?
one. Yep.
figure with the Yankees and NYCFC playing, as well as the rain, it's going to be a
In the rain.
not a playoff show.
Felix?
Hey, Felix.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'll be quick. I just wanted to, I wanted to talk quickly about the Coco event on Friday. As the self-appointed spokesperson for parents who brought kids there, that was awesome. And I've talked informally to people, so anecdotally, I think everyone had a great time. I was trying to find out if there was a way to do more of those. I know there's a logistical aspect of you maybe can't start until the sun goes down, so maybe it has to be spring and fall. And I apologize if this is something that used to happen a lot and I'm just been out of the loop, but I would just say that was a very well attended and really, really fun event. So if we could do more of those, that would be great.
Yep. I think the idea is, and I'm not exactly sure how the stage is involved, except maybe they put the screen up there. When we get the stage in Matheson Park, kind of working with the rec and the theater together to do it kind of, on a regular schedule. If it's, the third Friday of the month or whatever it is, there's talk of doing it. Back in the, say, 80s and maybe early 90s, Larry?
Into the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, there was kind of a film in the park kind of thing down in Matheson Park. There was actually there used to be a little cement pallet kind of thing, a little area where they had marked off for where I guess they put the projector on the screen or something. And it was kind of a regular event. So I think we're looking to bring that back for sure.
They have an inflatable, so.
Yeah, now they have now they have kind of and Greg Allen, the theater manager, said that they kind of have it, they can get it all set up in about 20 minutes now, where it used to take an hour or so. So
I was there that first day. It was not easy.
yeah.
But yeah, and also like Greg said, they are absolutely looking to do more outdoor events, even once the theater is up and running. And this is it's supposed to be an and, not an or. So.
Yeah, agreed. But we appreciate the feedback for sure, Felix.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, Brian, this will be Bryant Park North for those of you who have lived in the city and ever did movies in the park. Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Yep. And that reminds me too, I know one of the plans is to add pickleball courts to the senior center that would also be able to be flooded and used for ice skating potentially. So that would also remind me of Bryant Park when they have skating there. So that was jogged my memory on that, which is, I think that proposal is coming up for next year maybe. But I know they're working on it.
The design work is being
Design
done.
work's being
Yeah.
done, so.
Correct.
I just want to add, there were 3 movies scheduled for the park in the summer of 2021. One was canceled when we had that heat wave and it was like 95 degrees. But they did have 2 other movies that summer as well.
Yeah, I remember, there's one was like a musical.
Yeah, it was the Talking Heads movie.
Yeah.
And then the
What's that
Aretha
one?
Franklin movie. And
Okay.
Gimme Shelter was supposed to show.
That's right.
But that got heated out.
Yeah. Too hot for Irvington.
Too hot for it.
Any other public comment? There?
Nope.
I will move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is authorized expenditures in advance of the 2023 capital budget adoption.
So there's actually 2 parts to this process, but what I'll do is explain, give you a little bit of an overview of what this is. So as a result of the meeting that you had back in September, where we spoke about the firehouse expansion project, as well as the potential for municipal offices, we are recommending a contract with Sullivan Architecture. But what needs explaining, of course, is the total amount of the contract. The contract is $617,500, but there are 4 phases that are covered by that contract. The intention in entering into this agreement is to spend as little of that as possible in order to obtain a solid cost estimate, which is what the board is looking for in order to potentially proceed to a referendum or some sort of a public discussion about the project at a future point. So the contract is, the way our professional services contracts work, the contractor will only be paid, the professional will only be paid for work that they actually complete. So we will be, keenly aware of keeping that to a minimum, getting to the point where the design has been developed enough in order to obtain a cost estimate. So it's hard to give you a range, but I can give you an example, which is that there's a possibility that after only the first 2 phases of the agreement are complete, that we would have enough information to get a solid cost estimate. I think that's probably a little bit too early, but that's a possibility, and that would be about $300,000. There's also a possibility that, probably on the high side, that we may need to get through about 50 to 60% of the phase 4 portion of the budget, which is an additional 160 to 170,000 beyond that initial 300. So, it's a pretty wide range, but I think it is not at all likely that it would be the entire amount of the 617,500 that the contract is written for. Eventually, of course, if the project goes forward, that work will need to get completed. But we're only going to complete up to a point where we have enough information to get a cost estimate.
Right, and again, not just the cost estimate, that's clearly the single most important thing on our mind, but also to have a document and drawings that can answer questions that the
Yes.
public might have.
Yes.
Better views of what things are, certainly more complete drawings than we've seen.
What types of spaces would be created over there and that type of thing. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's absolutely, that all of that is necessary in order to get to a point where we have a cost estimate.
I guess when I was looking at it says a fixed fee of $950,000.
Right, so in the way the proposal is written is for the full cost of professional services all the way through the bidding process and into the construction and oversight process. So we're not even contemplating contracting for the final 2 phases of the work that they would complete. We're only looking at the first 4 phases, which is really the design work, the engineering work, the real heavy lifting to get a design, get to a cost estimate. So if you look closely at the agreement, there's portions in here which are marked as being not in contract.
Yeah.
So, for example, let me just get the right page here. Okay, so it would be page 7 of the attachment of Exhibit A, where the phases are detailed out, which is basically what I just outlined. So phases 5 and 6, which are bidding and contract administration during construction, those are not even considered as part of this contract. Should the project progress that far, of course, then we would ultimately end up entering into a contract for that portion.
Yeah, I guess my question, I'm just confused about the order of this. So the schematic design piece, none of that has been done. I mean, they've done some planning, so I assume that's already paid for, maybe?
Yes.
This is like additional
Yes.
changes. Okay.
Yeah, so what was done, I mean, you saw the results of the floor plans, and that's basically what we have, but there's no time, as we told you during the meeting back in September, there's almost no time has been spent on the exterior of the building and elevations and what it's going to look like. So all that schematic work needs to be done, and then the layout. There's been virtually no work done on the potential municipal portion of the facility next to the firehouse, right? Because that came up as a result of that meeting. So all of that is that schematic design phase.
And then I guess I'm just a little bit confused about how this, because we're talking about to get, I would assume, phase 3, I guess, approvals and permitting.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. I mean, I guess what we're trying to get to from our last meeting is we want to know what we think this will actually cost, right?
Right.
So I would assume that phase 3 wouldn't happen, right? Like it would be, we would sort of skip that phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. I didn't, in my summary, I didn't mention it in this way, but phase 3 is kind of a standard phase for most private
When you're
projects.
going to go through, when you know you're going to do it.
Right, and also, from our standpoint, we don't pay for permit fees and things like that. We don't, we might take out a building permit, but we don't pay ourselves for the fee. So the only real fees that might be associated with that is that there may need to be a seeker environmental review that we have to do. But that's after the cost estimate part.
So before we get to the bidding, they're going to do a cost estimate. I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay, they're going to do a cost estimate, and then that's when we'll sort of see what it looks like.
Right, this contract, although all of the phases are listed out in the proposal, this contract only includes phases 1, 2, there's probably not a 3, but it includes 1, 2, 3, and 4, basically. And that total, if everything was done to the very end, is $617,500. But we feel strongly that there'll be a point in time during that process, we don't have to get to the final finished construction documents, which is the end of phase 4. We won't need to get to the end of phase 4 in order to get a cost estimate. We'll get it at some point before that. And what I think I'm suggesting is that I don't know where that's going to be exactly. We haven't done any engineering work on this yet, so it's hard to be able to pin that down. But I can tell you that on the low side, we may be able to get a cost estimate at the end of phase 2, which would be about $300,000 in fees that we would incur. And there's also a very real possibility that it could take about 60% of the way through phase 4. And that's pretty much, so that would be another 160,000 or so. So that's your range of what I'm anticipating. But it's not the 617,500. You know, that's.
Or the 900.
Or the 900, yeah, exactly. It's 100% correct. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about that? Okay. So the mechanics of this, I mentioned there's 2 steps. The first is that because of the timing, and because of the timing of when we're going to be renewing our current outstanding debt obligations, we have a bond anticipation note that's coming due at the beginning of December. And because of the various notifications that are required, if you were to adopt a bond resolution, for example, tonight, which you're not, if you were to adopt one, we wouldn't even have time to include it in our next note issue in the beginning of December because of some various notification windows and waiting periods that we have. So instead, since we do have money in the bank in terms of fund balance, what we're asking the board to consider is adopting a resolution which is authorizing these expenditures in advance of actually borrowing the money. So as part of next year's capital budget, which I know you all went through this past summer, as part of next year's capital budget, assuming this all goes forward and you adopt this resolution, we will include whatever pre-authorization of expenditures you're going to authorize tonight, whatever authorization you have a resolution about tonight, we will include them in next year's capital borrowing. So it's essentially just advancing the money. I mean, it's a long-winded way of saying that. And if you read through the resolution, which I guess if you'll consider it, the mayor will read, it basically says it in fairly plain terms. So you're authorizing the expenditure of the money in advance, and then the next step would then be to approve the contract that I just outlined. So the 2 separate resolutions, that's all. Any questions?
Any questions?
I did have one that got me thinking, as part of this, in terms of the blue sky or future horizon, we had also talked about the potential, I don't know what the right word is, but the impacts on a potential theater upgrade, whether it's the modern entrance or not. When do we start to get some, when are you envisioning we might start to get some numbers for that? I'm concerned about like what interior renovations might really run up to be compared to whether or not we actually even had a strong number for, a robust number for the additional wing concept.
Right. Well, so I don't think we're going to be spending any more professional fees on playing that scenario out in terms of what that budget is. We have budget numbers that go back to 2019, which we rolled forward and updated. And that was the 6.5 million that we talked about at the September meeting. What we do need to do, and we'll probably be spending some of this architect's time, is to evaluate what we think the costs are for this building to turn it into, a handicap accessible lobby, entrance, stairway back up to the theater. So we need to nail that number down too. Whether it has to be a high quality estimate or a medium quality estimate, I'm not sure yet. I don't know how much money I want to put into that. We're going to kind of make that decision as we go, but we do need to get some better numbers on what this building would cost, because what you're going to be talking about with the public is the full package. So you need to have some better idea of what it's all going to cost, for sure.
I guess, and my other question really was that I know we talked about the firehouse project, including property that we don't currently own.
Yes.
So that also is a concern to me, that we're sort of planning for space we don't actually own.
We need to have further conversations about that, but some very, very, very initial conversations happened already, going back 2 years ago. But they're obviously more serious now. So I think when you get past this and we're in contract with a professional, I think we can start that process. I mean, I'm happy to speak with the village attorney and the rest of the board about how to go about doing that. But I think you're right to be concerned about it. It's an awkward, chicken and egg type thing, for sure.
But phase one doesn't rely on the property, right? It's the second, the 1B or whatever.
1B doesn't rely on it. That's correct. 1A doesn't rely on it. 1B does.
But the thing that we saw was like the entire thing.
At the end, yes.
The first drawing was just the 1A and the second one was 1B.
Yeah, but the cost, what Ed Marin said was, when you're talking about this project, you have to be talking about
Yes.
1A and B together.
Absolutely.
So you really can't separate them.
Yeah.
Because then you're talking about a totally different
Well,
cost.
unless you're not going to do 1B. In other words, we're only doing 1A.
Right. I think,
He was saying if you're going to ever do 1B, you have to do it now.
yeah, it's better to do it now, right? Yeah, no,
Those are a completely different cost.
yes. Yeah, there's definitely a economy of scale, or however you want to call it, efficiency in doing it at once. You should definitely have this conversation about the adjacent property sooner rather than later. I just got to get through one step at a time here, and that's what we're trying to do. So when I know the board is committed to doing that, and that's engaging with a professional to move forward, then we'll move forward also.
Any questions? It's fairly complicated for, it seems like a straightforward idea.
It's not, yeah, it's not simple.
Obviously, in order to even consider doing this, we need to know what it costs. And in order to know what it costs, it's going to mean spending some money. And certainly, after the presentation, and then me going to visit the firehouse, I mean, clearly something has to be done, right? So I am in favor of spending a little bit of money to see what all this is going to cost, so we can then figure out how and if we can go about doing it.
Yeah, that message was loud and clear from the September meeting for us. So that's why you have this in front of you.
And the visit was very eye-opening.
Good.
Yeah, there's not a lot of extravagance across the street.
Just things like seeing where the decontamination area was, seeing where the guys have to get dressed into the exhaust of the trucks. I mean, none of this makes any sense if you were starting from the scratch, you wouldn't design it this way. It has to be done that way because they get great credit for finding ways to work within that space. But I think if we want to have a fire department that's functioning, they should have safe spaces to do their work, right?
Can I just also ask, have we ever looked at, I know with the police review committee, we talk so much about like shared services. We ever look at shared services for fire department? But I actually noticed we talked about there being 3 bays, but there actually are 4 doors, not 3 there. How many trucks are in there?
4.
Four.
There's
And is that
Two
the
engines,
minimum, is
the
that
ladder,
the
and then-
minimum number you need?
It kind of covers, you probably could do with 1 less engine, you probably have 3 potentially, but they're so complicated that one's often out of service. So it's interesting, like the ladder truck can go to like a regular house fire, even if it's not high, like the ladder truck also has a pumper on it. Where the rescue is like kind of the oddball, it doesn't. It has cascade filling, so you can fill bottles, the tanks for the SCBA packs. And it has like jaws of life and that kind of stuff. So it's like slightly different. The other 3 are somewhat interchangeable, with the exception of the ladder. It's 105 feet or 110 feet.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but it has a 110-foot ladder, which is very different. So could you have 1 less potentially? But there's almost one of them's out of service. I'd say 3 months out of the year, on average. So you kind of need them. Obviously, the mutual aid between departments is super common. If there's any kind of working fire, you immediately call for a neighboring department. So there's a lot of kind of shared services already. I think.
Brian, I will say real quick, we, as you know, and I gave you the history of this, and it was actually I only gave you the more recent history from 2009. I actually found an expansion study that was done in 1990 by, of all people, John Sullivan, which was quite interesting. It goes back to
Do you remember
1990. So, but in any case, in our time,
Yeah, it's the dates.
It's like scratch out the-
yeah, right,
Control H
exactly.
for the
There it is
dates.
again.
Yeah, no, it's a little different. So in our time that we worked from it's 5 or 6 years really, from about 2015 until really where we are now, we explored a lot of different options. I think we kind of outlined and go through all the details of what they were. I'm happy to let you know what they were, but we looked at for alternate locations. But one of the things we did look at is the potential for a combined facility with a neighboring village located at or close to the village line between those 2 villages, between our village and the other. And there wasn't property available. We actually looked at it, and it's actually not something, I don't think we could even condemn it, to be honest with you. It's owned by a religious institution, so the property that might be possible. So we looked at those types of options. I think the neighboring village would have been happy to have some sort of a combined facility because they have inadequate facilities like we do. So the idea that, for example, if you turn that around and you say, okay, well, Irvington's not going to continue to have a facility for its fire department and instead house it somewhere else, you have inadequate facilities in neighboring villages as well. So it's not as simple as just 100% relying on shared services. But we did look at it, and we did look at, like I said, a couple of different locations where we tried to size up a facility that could handle multiple villages. One of the things we did in looking at this particular facility is, as we were fitting out the spaces, we did look at the idea that eventually, and we talked about this with the fire department, that eventually this could be a partial paid department. So in many places where you don't have enough volunteers, you have paid drivers, and then you have volunteer firefighters. And when you have paid drivers, you need the spaces in the building to accommodate the overnights and, you know, the sleeping quarters and all those things. And, you know, if this building were to be reconfigured, it could be reconfigured for that. So we're trying to think for the future that, you know, it may not be all volunteer here, but the idea that we wouldn't have anything, no facility, and only rely on neighboring shared volunteer departments is something that I don't think we can pull off unless we can physically locate a facility that can respond equally to both communities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the tough part.
I think an interesting thing about Irvington is we have one building where, you know, every other department I could think of, like I think Tarrytown has 6. You know, so I think there's definitely some savings by having one building versus multiple buildings, especially in Tarrytown where there's one that's literally, I think, 200 yards apart. There's one kind of on Meadow Street in Tarrytown, which is actually Irvington Schools, and then there's one right on 119. Those were built in the last 15 years as well. So it's like it seems like we've tried to consolidate by having one building as opposed to you know, having kind of like the engine company is on Sunnyside Lane and the ladder company's here. And it's interesting too, the strange politics that happens with that, because then they're competing for resources as well. Like they're all one department, but they have different houses. And, you know, there's like the whole thing of like, you have the chief, we get the captain, like there's like very strange politics. So it's kind of nice that we have none of that drama, as well as kind of, it's kind of, you know, everybody goes to one place and it's not spread out. I think that's why it's so centrally located, is that it, well, it used to be here, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
This
in
is
this
actually the old
room.
firehouse.
Yeah.
But, you know, so I think, that,
Building was the old firehouse?
What's that?
This building?
yeah,
Yeah,
this room actually, if you
if
look
you-
outside, I think it still says.
It still says fire department on it. Yeah. In fact, that's why this, one of the reasons why this ceiling, well, above the drop ceiling is taller than the ceiling in the police department, because it was taller for the trucks. So like my office is above this area, you go upstairs, that's elevated because of this is being a truck room. So it's interesting, it's the pictures. But look, I'm not an expert in, you know, all the various ebbs and flows of having a fire department, or other ways that you possibly could do things. And I'm sure that if there are any questions or any things that you want to explore, that the fire chief and his department would be happy to answer questions about it and how things operate and all that. I mean, I can't tell you firsthand about all the answers.
So one of the keys is that the volunteers have to get there before they get the trucks out. So that's why you can't just have, say, they can say, only have it on, you know, downtown Dobbs Ferry for 2 villages. It just would be such a long response time for here.
Yeah, it would be a different scenario, certainly, especially if you lived in the northern part of our village and you were being responded to by the downtown Dobbs Ferry, for example, just to pick a village. So.
I guess my question is slightly different. Like, I think if you had, and maybe you're saying, Brian, that it doesn't really work, but if you had, it's like my original question, right? If you had a smaller, if you didn't have 4 trucks, for example, would that be different? And would you then have agreements, which I think they probably already have, right? To like, they respond, like from Tarrytown, they respond from Dobbs Ferry. If you had a big fire, I'm assuming.
Right.
What the chief said when I was
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, we have full mutual aid agreements throughout Westchester with departments. And I think the issue is, what's your ability on a regular basis to rely exclusively on mutual aid? I mean, if, for example, if this village made the decision not to ever have a ladder truck, and you constantly need a ladder truck, you would be relying 100% on another set of volunteers to respond to your fires. So
I was
it's,
thinking more like a joint department, not like a relying on Dobbs Ferry.
right. Yeah, well, look, I mean, the only experience I have is our discussions that we had with our neighboring village about the possibility of a joint facility. And really the only reason that it had any merit in exploring is because it was, you know, located very close to the line between the villages. So physically, the response time, was similar in both villages, and you still could obtain adequate response time. But there weren't any realistic opportunities to do that.
I think one of our big issues is just, it's so built up here, there's just not a lot of open land to build something. And Dobbs Ferry is not any better. Tarrytown has, I guess, right on the Irvington border, there's open land, but it's all owned by, kind of private company, private citizens. And I don't think it really works for Tarrytown to be that far south. It worked better for Dobbs Ferry, I think.
Yeah, I think Dobbs, could have worked if there was a site.
Yeah.
Just like we could have been looking at a different place on Main Street if there was another site. I mean, that's part of why we looked at this for six plus years, is to try to find. We realized that this particular site just by itself was not adequate, unless you wanted a 54-foot building, located jammed into one location. But we searched 4 different sites, and if you include the potential joint facility, it was 5 different sites that we looked at. I didn't really outline them for everyone. I'm happy to tell you otherwise, but there's it was a struggle.
Whereas the village will engage in services related to the design of the Irvington Firehouse, resolved to authorize the clerk treasurer to increase capital project 201, firehouse architectural design by $650,000 in advance of the adoption of the 2023 capital budget, at which time the project will be funded. I'll make a motion. I get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolved to approve the consultant agreement with Sullivan Architecture PC for consulting services relating to the firehouse expansion project for an amount not to exceed $617,500. Authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. I'll make a motion. If I get a second.
Second.
All in favor? Authorizing tax certiorari settlement, Hudson Gray LLC.
Yeah, this is fairly anticlimactic, I think. You already had this one in front of you. It probably looks familiar to you. Basically, this is one additional parcel that was settled under the same ownership group. And you settled the other parcels, which were considerably higher in terms of refund. I think it was $30,000 or thereabouts. This is one additional parcel related to that. I'm not really sure why it came through in separate batches, but they did, and here it is. So for a refund of $8,200 approximately, which is budgeted.
Whereas petitions having been filed by Hudson Gray LLC challenging real property tax assessments in the village of Irvington and the town of Greenberg's assessment rolls with respect to subject property for the 2016 and 2021 tax years, with respect to parcel designated as section 2.80, block 33, lot 9, property owner Hudson Gray LLC, property description Buckhouse Street and Station Road, years 2016 and 2021. Whereas practitioners' actions are now pending in Supreme Court, Westchester County, and whereas the town and the petitioner have reached a mutually agreeable resolution, now therefore the village is authorized to effectuate a settlement commensurate with the following terms. Proposed settlement on section 280, block 33, lot 9. The assessment years 2016 to 2021. The village of Irvington share of the refund is $8,220.78. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Last, we have a last minute addition, which is approval of a new member for the Irvington Fire Department. So I will, I'll just make up a,
Yeah. That's all you're doing is approving.
yeah, exactly. I'll make a motion to approve Jan Olstowitzki as a member of the Irvington Fire Department, effective immediately. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Reports of boards, standing committees, and officers, trusted liaison reports. Mark, how many more do you got?
Nothing new.
Anything new? How many more do you have altogether?
Just a few.
3?
2, I guess. When's a work session?
Please note Matheson Park will be closed this Saturday, October 22nd, to the public to allow for preparation of the hayride. The park will open to the public at approximately 5 p.m. for the hayride. The Matheson Park splash pad is now closed for the season. Senior citizens will be visiting Arthur Avenue tomorrow. The Community Advisory Board will hold its first in-person meeting in almost 2 years tomorrow morning, Irvington Senior Center, 8 a.m. The park staff and Irvington Beautification Committee continue to decorate the village for the fall season. Halloween window decorating, as Brian said, is Saturday, October 29th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Halloween parade, as Brian mentioned, 3:30 Sunday, October 30th. Gathering at Immaculate Conception parking lot at 3 p.m. Congratulations, as Arlene said, to Irvington High School student Joanna Paul and C.J. Riley for organizing a run in the Irvington Woods Park to raise money to purchase native plants for the Irvington School District campus. Irvington Woods Committee is scheduled to meet this Thursday at 7 p.m. Youth flag football with over 80 participants will be held at Scenic Hudson Park on Thursday, starting at 4 p.m. 3 different sections of boys and girls are participating this fall. There is a GAGA Ball, G-A-G-A Ball, running a program at O'Hara Nature Center on Tuesdays at 4:30 for 3rd graders through 5th grade boys and girls. It's worth a ride up to see it in action, and I guess you'll have to drive up to know what that means.
I'm not sure. I think it's Gaga,
GAGA?
not the singer.
Is it the game?
It's like an Israeli ball game.
Yeah, it's in like a.
I know that game.
They play in caps.
I beat the 5th graders at that game.
Nice.
In heels.
Pretty good.
You need some kind of handicap.
Join the board crowd.
Yes, I did that.
That's it for me.
Excellent. Mitch?
So as Brian alluded to, the Sunset Cinema last Friday night, the theater sold 354 tickets.
Wow, that's
To put
great.
that in perspective, that would essentially, depending on configuration, that would sell out the Irvington Theater. 130 of those were bought at the door. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, I mean, and with all the, I mean, when I was on the commission and all the like focus groups of getting people involved and do they know about events and stuff, to have such a local centered event draw that many people is really eye-opening.
So it shows a hunger for programming there.
Greg said the feedback was great from the families. A school board member approached him to say how great it was. So that's great since they were the ones providing the place. The ice cream truck worked for 2 straight hours selling soft serve. There was that much demand for it, that many people. So everywhere you look at it, it was a huge success. Greg also said that now on November 3rd, the theater is going to do a play reading at the library. So that's something that I know the library, I'm the liaison for both, and they're meeting right now, I'm missing their meeting to be here, but I know that's something that the library had reached out to the theater about giving them a space to do stuff like this, and Greg, I guess, found the appropriate project for that. So that's going on November 3rd. So the theater is continuing to host events even without a physical theater, and I think the good thing about this is that when the theater does open up again, the HVAC system is in. These ideas aren't going away, and Greg said that that he is definitely looking into making the outdoor events a regular thing, even though the theater could be open. That's all I got.
Really?
So I just have one report from DPW, and I'm just gonna kind of read through, because we always get these reports from DPW about what they do, and I don't always read them, but I just want to also give people kind of a good sense of that they're doing these things all the time. But so they're in their highway department road repair, they removed a hazardous tree from Ardsley Avenue West and Lower Field Point Drive. They pruned the trees around Park Road, Palliser Road, and North Echo Street. They repaired the catch basin at the corner of Lewis and Harriman. They repaired the catch basin at the Red Barn Bakery. They performed maintenance on all their winter equipment. They repaired the drainage line on Lewis Road. They also worked in conjunction with the Tree Commission. They established a fall planting RFP for the Main Street area, and they purchased 5 trees. awarded a contract to SP&S Landscaping. And they also work in conjunction with the Parks and Recs Department. They assisted in unloading multiple trees for fall plantings at the O'Hare Nature Center and performed an arborist inspection at 10 South Cotton Street with the O'Hare Nature Center personnel. I just want to say that I also met with Greg recently, and I just told him how my excuse, like at work, I'm always like, I can't go, I see snow. But actually, the truth is, there's really no snow on Riverview Road by like 5, 6 in the morning, and I actually really could drive out, but nobody really knows that. So I
Treacherous hill, yeah.
told them what a great job they do, but how I don't really say that at work.
Along DPW, also want to congratulate Dennis Wanneruli Senior for retiring after 37 years. So thank you, Dennis, for all those years.
Congratulations.
Village Administrator's report.
Just a quick update on the East Sunnyside Lane gas main construction. So last week, as you know, was the first week that Con Edison was doing that construction. The road is closed daily during the time of construction because there simply isn't any room to pass by while they're working. They do plate the road every night, and the road is open during other hours. We did observe that although we had advertised our closure to be 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., we did observe that they were not there on the site until the earliest, 7:45 a.m., and sometimes as late as 8:20. So we got them to agree to not start any construction before 8 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. So the road is now closed starting 8 a.m. Daily. So I think that I know it's only an hour, but when it's an hour and you think the road's closed and there's no one there working, that's pretty annoying, I'm sure, for the people that live there and use that road.
And
So
as well as the buses getting the kids to school.
yeah, so the school knows about the change in time. I don't know whether they've adjusted their routes or if they plan to, but that's their decision. The road is open, until 8 a.m. every morning, so.
Is there going to be messaging going out on that to the public?
Yeah, we put out revised information on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also communicated with a significant number of people that have emailed about this project directly. So, and the supervisor in Greenberg knows as well, and the administrator and mayor in Tarrytown also know.
So I will remind people that this isn't our project.
Yeah.
It's Con Edison's project. We didn't even raise our hand and say, please do this project. They just said, we're doing this project, and we can suggest things to make it easier on the residents, but at the end of the day, it's kind of their call on a lot of these things. They are, been working with us well. Even the fact that they're willing to push it back an hour, I thought was a great sign. And it's going to be, there's no easy way to do this. The most obvious thing is to keep one lane open the whole time, like we were able to do in Harriman and Riverview, but the road is just frankly too narrow. With their trucks, they actually go over the double yellow line, so you can't
And there's no shoulder.
do it safely. And
So it's not like you
there's
can,
no room anywhere. So
squeeze by.
we're just gonna have to do the best we can as we come up with suggestions that come from the residents who live there and know the best. We're happy to pass them along, but again, we don't have the decision-making authority on this. We have the suggestion providing authority. That's about it. But so far, they've been working with us. Thanks to the IPD also for helping it go as smoothly as possible, and Tarrytown PD. It's kind of a no man's land too, because it's Irvington, Tarrytown, and Greenberg. So there's a lot of coordination, and there's just no easy way to do it. So hopefully they'll stay on schedule and be done by spring, and have something that's fixed. I think I remember at one point they said there's something like 23 leaks they identified there or something. So it's like, this is one of the projects that I don't think is a nice to have. This was a necessary to have. And we know that as long as I can remember, at least since I've been on the fire department in '98, they've constantly been working there on leaks, and they just haven't been able to fix them all. So
We're right on the corner there.
yeah,
And we have been having, when I go out and walk the dog at night, we smell it.
Yeah.
There's always gas, and you're like, it's a little scary. It's
Yeah.
like, where is this coming from? And
Yeah.
we've reported it multiple times. So
Yep, and it's just hard for them to find it. So this is an important project that is necessary and annoying, and they're all true. And apologies to the people that live there. They're obviously heavily impacted, and they have to go through Elmsford, and at least there's a Dunkin' Donuts on the other side.
We
But,
had, we had a real live scenario of what could happen, which is what happened on Harriman Road last winter, where we had a deteriorated line was flooded and filled with water. And apparently that's not a good thing when you have gas service. So it actually left significant portions of those neighborhoods without gas in the middle of the winter. So that can happen. That became an emergency and they addressed it quickly as they could. They're hoping to not have that happen on East Sunnyside. So we're continuing the work. The residents have been actually very good. I know there's certainly been a number of complaints, but I think when you explain to people what the situation is in the same way that Brian just did, their understanding of the situation. And I even had a resident who was kind enough to notice that our police were spending a fair amount of time talking to people and explaining the routes, turn around, go this way, make this turn, that turn. She actually made up a nice flyer that they slightly adapted, but they're using that to hand out to people. So when they come up, they hand them the flyer, here's the detour, have a nice day. It's great. Very receptive to it, so that's it.
I assume there's no village clerk treasurer's report
No.
to you, Peter. And has our new village clerk treasurer started? or-
November 3rd.
November 3rd.
Yeah. She has an email address, so we're going to send you around that once that's all set up, in case you want to email her.
Village attorney's report?
No.
Public,
She's the end of November. Yeah.
public comment, home or here? Nope, okay. Action items, everything?
No.
I'll make a motion to adjourn if I can have a second. All in favor?